These true crime stories, which include serial killers and horrifying current events, demonstrate that sometimes reality is much darker than fiction. A year after Valerie Reyes' body was discovered inside a suitcase off Glenville Road, Javier Da Silva, 25, pleaded guilty in federal court in White Plains, New York on Wednesday. A federal kidnapping case against Da Silva has a sentence range of 30 years to life. On May 21st, he will be sentenced. Federal prosecutors said Da Silva put his phone in airplane mode before entering Reyes' home in New Rochelle, New York, in the early morning hours of January 29, 2019, according to newly released information about the case. The Department of Justice stated in a statement that Da Silva then turned to stealing her money and possessions after taping her mouth and placing her in a suitcase. According to the federal prosecutors, he took out $5,350 using her debit card. And the days after her death, he allegedly sold Reyes' iPad. According to a statement from Greenwich Police Chief James Hevey, this extensive investigation included examination of numerous crime scenes, hundreds of hours of surveillance footage, and numerous interviews of potential witnesses. Social media traces and records from other sources were also looked at. Even though justice has been done, we are nonetheless devastated by Valerie's passing and really hope that her family will be able to put this tragic event behind them. According to the criminal complaint against him, Da Silva told federal investigators he was with Reyes on January 29, 2019, when she fell to the floor and hit her head. According to the federal complaint, Reyes sustained a serious brain injury. Da Silva admitting to placing her in a suitcase, which caused her to suffocate to death, to federal investigators. Da Silva delivered the body in a suitcase to a forested area off Glenville Road, where it was discovered on February 5, 2019 by a town highway worker. Asphyxiation caused by a murder was the cause of death. Valerie Reyes, a young woman with her entire adult life ahead of her, was the sad victim of a horrendous kidnapping carried out by Javier Da Silva, as he admitted in court today. Da Silva is now subject to substantial repercussions because to the good work of the FBI and our neighborhood law enforcement partners, according to a statement from the U.S. Attorney Geoffrey S. Berman. On February 12, 2019, Da Silva was taken into custody at his Queens, New York apartment on a federal allegation of kidnapping that resulted in death. The FBI conducted the case with help from the Greenwich and New Rochelle police departments. Reyes' relatives did not respond to demands for comment on Wednesday. Reyes, who was employed by an Eastchester, New York bookstore, had a brief relationship with Da Silva, according to her relatives. In 2018, the partnership came to an end. Da Silva's use of the debit card and his trip to the automated bank teller in New Rochelle helped investigators track him to his apartment in Queens. According to court documents, Da Silva had been in talks with federal prosecutors and defense attorneys about a potential plea bargain for months. Federal prosecutors stated in a court filing from last spring that the government and defense counsel have had discussions regarding a possible deposition of this case as recently as March 2019. The negotiations have not been completed, and we plan to continue our discussions. Da Silva has been held at a federal detention unit at the Westchester County Jail. Immigration and Customs Enforcement states that he was breaking the law when the crime was committed. He has dual citizenship with Portugal and Venezuela. He arrived in New York City on a visa on May 8, 2017, but failed to depart the country by the deadline of August 5, 2017, according to ICE. He overstayed his visa. He would be deported after serving his prison term, according to federal authorities. In front of U.S. District Judge Vincent L. Brissetti, he entered a guilty plea on Wednesday. 8-year-old Schuett was in that summer. Due to her fear of the dark and dislike of sleeping by herself, she frequently shared a bed with her mother, Ellen. However, Jennifer was restless that night in August, so her mother advised her to retire to her own bed because she had a job to go to in the morning. The following morning, Ellen had no luck locating Jennifer. Her bedroom's window, open, looked out onto the parking lot. While she was sleeping, someone had stolen her from her bed. After promptly calling the police, Ellen's daughter was nowhere to be seen. Later on that day, 3 children engaged in field play found Jennifer's body. Despite slitting her throat from ear to ear, the attacker luckily missed any significant arteries. Jennifer was rushed to the hospital where she is now alive. She was unable to speak at the moment due to her wounds. As a result, she wrote letters to the police. The majority of the time, according to Jennifer, was me writing notes to my mother, and she would hand them to the officer outside. The fact that her kidnapper had pretended to be an undercover policeman when he forced her into his car caused her to distrust all men at that moment, but she was especially afraid of police. Jennifer's notes were highly specific, noting the man's appearance, the dents on his car, and even his first name, Dennis. Jennifer claims that the man led her to a parking area and assured her that her mother would pick her up after they waited until the sun rose. The man continued to smoke and drink beer while Jennifer waited impatiently for her mother. Jennifer later added these facts to the list. She recalls him starting the car and saying, "Well, your mother's not coming." Then, as she grilled him with queries, he took her to a field outside of town. He informed her that his gun was in the back seat, and when she got out of the front bucket seat to check, he assaulted her. After being attacked, Jennifer awoke to find herself being carried into the middle of a field while completely naked. The man abandoned her on an anthill after she pretended to be dead. She briefly lost consciousness when he drove away, but ant bites kept her awake. She recalled, "I realized I couldn't scream. All I could manage was to throw my right hand on top of my neck." After being saved, Jennifer realized that she had the best opportunity of finding the person who injured her. She did her best to recall every single detail. She recalled saying that he had appeared oily and might have had a scar on his face. Every little bit I could recall and thought would be helpful in locating him. To assist with their hunt, detectives also hired a sketch artist. Again, Jennifer was unable to talk at that time, but she was able to jot down enough information to paint a complete picture. Police released the man's photo to the public, but they were unable to locate him. Jennifer said, "I simply found it so aggravating that I couldn't express myself the way I wanted to." Then, the second miracle happened. Jennifer's vocal cords began to recover, despite the fact that they were split in two and weren't supposed to do so. Jennifer let out a little moan at one particularly unpleasant point. Jennifer eventually waited 18 years for any advancement, but advancement was made in time. A new investigator named Tim Cromie was taking over her case and wanted to meet with her, according to a call she received. Detective Cromie, who was committed to solving Jennifer's case, had the clothing fragments examined. Thanks to technological advancements, they were successful in finding a match a year later in the form of Dennis Earl Bradford. Bradford attempted to sexually assault a woman in a pub after being just freed from prison for another kidnapping. He also went for another woman and pulled a knife on her 7 years after the initial kidnapping. Bradford confessed while in tears after learning the young girl was still alive. Jennifer read her victim impact statement to his grave instead of the trial on the day it was meant to start. She stated that she had been trying to find Bradford for 19 years and had plenty to say to him. Jennifer, a 19-year-old lady, was abducted and subjected to sexual assault, and her attempted murder occurred 19 years ago. Through in vitro fertilization, she is now married and the mother of 2 children. Her 2 major objectives are to track down the man who abducted, assaulted, and attempted to kill her 19 years ago, as well as to use her voice to share her tale with as many people as she can. She has succeeded in both of these endeavors and hopes that the story of her case will serve as a lesson for all victims of violent crime to never give up on their quest for redress. She can accomplish anything if she puts her mind to it and speaks up. A serial killer and rapist terrorized the Florida city of Tampa Bay in 1984. Bobby Joe Long kidnapped, raped, and killed at least 10 women in the course of 8 months. It seemed as though he would never halt his reign of brutality against weak women, but a smart teen girl made a drastic change. Lisa McVey, then 17 years old, was being kidnapped by Long on November 3rd of that year as she rode her bike from her job to her grandmother's house. Lisa was tormented for the ensuing 26 hours while being held at gunpoint, raped, and blindfolded. Sadly, Lisa had experienced suffering. She has endured abuse for many years. After spending time in and out of foster care due to her mother's drug and alcohol addiction, Lisa was made to move in with her grandmother when she was 14 in order to take care of her. Her mother was an addict. Here, the boyfriend of her grandma would assault her while putting a gun to her head. After enduring this for 3 years, Lisa was prepared to commit suicide. The night before she was kidnapped, she wrote the suicide letter. Lisa experienced a strong will to survive after being yanked from one difficult situation and placed in another. She diligently committed to memory as much information about her kidnapping as she could, including the time that had passed, the number of steps she had taken, and the color of the captor's automobile, a red Dodge Magnum. She made it a point to leave as many fingerprints as she could throughout the location, just in case she didn't survive the ordeal alive. She started to appeal to Long's childlike side after determining that he had a childlike mind by expressing her desire to be his secret lover. She got close to him and fabricated a tale about being the only kid of a sick father to win his compassion. In the end, Lisa's strategies worked, and she was able to convince Long to free her in a distant area. He told her to keep the blindfold on for 5 minutes as he ran away. Before going home, she followed instructions only to have her grandmother's boyfriend beat her up. She endured 5 hours of rigorous questioning regarding her whereabouts. Finally, a call was made to the police to report the occurrence when her account was determined to be reliable and consistent enough. The police were able to identify Long and link him to previous crimes after Lisa gave them a description of her kidnapper, his vehicle, the path they followed, and other pertinent information. Long was responsible for the rape of at least 50 additional women, in addition to the murder of 10 women, whom he lured through classified ads. 20-year-old artist Anne Wick, whom Long had raped and strangled in March 1984, had been his first victim. Long was under probation for an assault at the time of this murder. 9 more ladies passed away in 3 different counties during the following 8 months. 5 of his verified victims were known sex workers, and 2 were exotic dancers, preying on defenseless women. After Lisa negotiated her way out of a situation, 2 more ladies were killed. The information about Lisa McVey's life after her kidnapping and rape is the most significant information in this video. On November 16th, after setting up a surveillance operation, the police apprehended Long and identified him as a suspect in the killings. On September 23, 1985, Long entered a plea of guilty to 7 counts of sexual battery, 8 counts of first-degree murder, 8 acts of kidnapping, and the kidnapping and rape of Lisa McVey. He was given 33 life sentences, but he was given the death penalty for killing Michelle Denise Sims and Virginia Johnson. On May 23, 2019, Lisa and Linda Nuttall, another survivor, were in the room when he was executed. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and ring the bell to get notified every time we upload a new video.